Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Hall. I'm the CEO of the Insurance Council. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this online forum. This forum is designed to give you the opportunity to hear what to expect as we're moving through this claims and recovery period post the flood event. I'll start the meeting acknowledging that we're coming from various traditional lands. I am currently on Gadigal land in Sydney, and I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. We might just jump forward to our agendas so we know what's coming. I'll just quickly introduce everybody who will be talking today on the panel, so you're familiar with the areas that they will look after. We're going to go through an overview of the recent flooding that's happened in central Victoria and along the Murray border. And what support is available, and then we'll go into the claims process. We've also collected a bunch of questions that the community has been asking already, and we hope to cover off on those in this session so that you have a better understanding of what's happening. Moving forward, the Insurance Council will be coordinating on the ground community sessions where you will be able to meet with face-to-face with an insurer, but at all times the best thing for you to do is always pick up the phone and call your insurer or drop them an email or use their online portal in the first instance, because they have teams of people ready to be able to help you through this process. So joining us today from the Insurance Council of Australia, and we're the body that represents all the general insurers in Australia, we've got Kylie McFarlane, who is our Chief Operating Officer, and Kylie is responsible for the team who looks after all sorts of things when insurance is triggered, when there are events and the like, and the recovery phase. Supporting Kylie is Liam Alter. Liam will be talking to you about the claims process. Liam has had many years working in insurance and in claims, and is very well versed in being able to explain what happens in the next steps through these processes. Joining us from Legal Aid is Dion Newburn. Dion will be talking about the support that is available to you. Insurance, after all, is a contract and can often require some legal expertise and advice, and that's what our Legal Aid and those consumer supporting agencies are here for. And then we have Damien joining us well from the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. They're the authority that will look after any issues if things are not going right for you with your claim, and it is a free service, and we'll come to AFCA in a moment. You'll hear us refer to them as AFCA. So I might jump to the next slide, please, Far. Thanks. So what's happened in the last few weeks is that we've seen yet another continuation of the La Nina wet weather event that's been really besieging Australia's east coast now for 6 months or more. In insurance terms, we call it a catastrophe 223, but really you all know it as the recent flood event that happened in central Victoria and southern New South Wales. So since the 12th of October, we've been tracking all this rainfall event across the area. We were very concerned about it, which is why we declared it a significant event. And of course, when the worst did happen in a number of communities, particularly in central Victoria, were very badly affected, it was upgraded to an insurance catastrophe event. Now, that means that for those people living in those regions that were affected, they are prioritised by their insurers for help. And it means that we are deploying people into that region and tracking all the data very carefully to understand how the claims process and the recovery period is going. So at the moment, as we are entering the last week of October, we know that we've got around about 13,160 claims that have come in as a result of this flood. Across a very large region, including right down into northern Tasmania, in fact. Those numbers are continuing to increase. So as people are returning to their properties and discovering damage, they're putting in a claim with their insurer. And what we would say to anyone is that if you haven't yet put in a claim, please make a phone call and start the process. Even if you're unsure about that, it's more important to alert your insurer to the fact that you think you may have a problem and get a claim happening. And that way we can start managing it better. At the outset, I did say it's been a very large event. And this is really just to paint context, because we will talk about some of the delays and the like. But we've had, since the drought broke, and we all remember the drought, and now it's flipped around and we're in La Nina, and we've had since February 2020 nearly $9 billion worth of insurance claims as a result of all the wet weather. So it's been quite a big event, and this past 6 months has been probably one of the spate of the worst flooding we've seen in Australian history across at least 4 states now. So it has brought a lot of pressure into the system, and really, as we head into summer months, we're hoping that we can get at least a bit of a dry spell to get communities back online. But I think more importantly, let's talk about consumers and you as policyholders and impacted by floods. There is a lot of support that is available to you, and often the recovery process can be pretty arduous and challenging at times. Insurers do their best to try to help people, but no 2 claims are ever the same, and there are a lot of, as I said, issues at the moment in the system with being able to secure trades and the like. So, it's always important to look after yourself first and foremost, your mental health and the health and well-being of your family. And that's why we do a lot of work with organisations like the Red Cross, Lifeline, Financial Counselling Australia, a very important service if you are struggling to understand how financially you will make ends meet. They can provide free financial counselling to you. Legal advice, which we'll come to in a moment. And of course, it depends what side of the Murray River you're on. If you are in Victoria, it's Legal Aid Victoria. And if you're in New South Wales, Legal Aid New South Wales. But they're all very much cooperative and work together, and we'll cross-reference you. ARC Justice is another organisation that you can access assistance with in Victoria. AFCA, the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, used to be the Ombudsman, but it's been now known as AFCA for the last couple of years. That is a free complaint service, and we'll come to them in a moment. And then our National Emergency Management Agency, hopefully you don't have to have anything to do with them. They're the ones who step in where things are really bad, and they're coordinating housing and the like. So that's NEMA. We might just jump to the next slide. So ARC, maybe what I might do here is, Dion, hand over to you to talk us through the support services you have available.
Thanks, Andrew. This is my name is Damien Stock. I'm the CEO of ARC Justice.
Oh, sorry, Damien.
No, not at all.
I got confused.
So ARC, not at all. ARC Justice runs 2 community legal centres, one that's based in Bendigo, a Loddon Campaspe Community Legal Centre, and one that's based in Shepparton, the Goulburn Valley Community Legal Centre. And we also have a housing advocacy program. So our catchment is all of central and northern Victoria, including most of the flood impacted regions. We're a free community legal service. We provide free legal advice and some ongoing assistance in many legal areas, including those that we know will increase or result because of the flooding. So primarily that includes advice in relation to housing. If people are renting, either struggling with rental payments, need to end their lease, need to have repairs done, or being asked for rental payments when they can't live in the property. Or of course, compensation down the track, we can advise on that. If people are struggling with their mortgage payments, anything to do with housing, we can assist with. Insurance claims, we can provide some advice and assistance, although we will probably warmly refer through to Consumer Action Law Centre, who are specialists in that area. And the same with housing, I should say. We've got Tenants Victoria standing right behind us that can provide extra support if we can't meet the demand. Similarly, social security, we know that access to payments can be impacted by people who are relocated. So accessing one-off payments and ensuring stability of social security benefits is really important. And we work with Social Security Rights Victoria on that. We can assist with employment matters and debt issues. But we also know that our ordinary legal areas that we assist with will increase as a result of the floods. So we do a lot of work in the family violence space. Unfortunately, we know that increases when people are temporarily relocated. The same with family law disputes, and child protection matters and where children are staying. So any legal issues that arise for communities in central and northern Victoria, as a result of the floods, we'd ask that you contact us. Our numbers are the 03 numbers on the 2 slides that are attached. You can contact us directly if you're in our catchment, or we also work really closely with Disaster Legal Help Victoria, and that's the 1-800 number that is on the slides. We're a team of about 50 people across the 2 catchments, but we have behind us the entire community legal sector, all the specialists, the Law Institute, the Vic Bar. So if we find that we have more referrals than we can handle ourselves, we'll be bringing them in to assist us. So yeah, please get in touch. Happy to give you advice. And oftentimes people experience life problems and don't realise that there is a legal solution to those. So if you're unsure, get in touch and we'll provide you with some assistance. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Sammy. And we may come back and ask for if you've got any comments when we step to the claims process, some of the types of questions that come your way, cash settlements and the like, that often people are trying to get their minds around. Right, now I've got this correct, so I'll go to Dion from AFCA. Dion, do you want us to step everyone through what your role is?
Thank you. So I'm Dion Newburn from the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. I'm the Senior Manager of the insurance teams. AFCA, or the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, we're an independent dispute resolution organisation. We're also free for consumers. So if you have a dispute with a financial firm, which may include an insurer or a bank, and you're not happy with the decision made by the firm, or you're not happy with the outcome, or you're not happy with delays, you can come to AFCA and we can help you assist through that process. A lot of our work does resolve in the early stages. I think roughly 40% of our work will resolve when a complaint is referred to a firm. But we do have the ability to make binding decisions on insurance companies, and that may be around issues such as the decline of a claim or a claim amount, or the scope of works, meaning that the work to be done, and if there's a disagreement about that. And as I indicated, we can also look at issues around service and how a claim has been handled. We're an alternative to court. As I said, we're free. You don't need to be represented to come to AFCA. We've got very experienced staff in the insurance space, so you can come to us and effectively lodge a complaint and tell us what you want and why, and we can assist you through that process. So you don't need a paid representative to come to AFCA. You can have a family member or somebody assist you if that's something that would help you, but you certainly don't need to have a lawyer or a paid representative assist you through that process. If we go to the next slide, if you're unhappy with the handling of a claim, you can lodge an internal complaint also with the insurer, and that's probably a good natural first step to take. Often those complaints can be resolved reasonably quickly, and if you remain unsatisfied with the answer given to you by the insurer, you do have that option to come to AFCA at any time. If you do come to AFCA, and you need our assistance, the types of information that we may ask for are things like timelines of events. So what occurred over the few weeks sort of following the loss, to help us understand any reports you've got. Sometimes it's photographs. Everyone's got a phone now, so often even some phone footage can assist an insurer and AFCA deal with a complaint or make a decision. Photographs and also witness statements. Often in the communities that you might have left your home because of a flood warning, but a neighbour or someone else may have been there and may be able to provide something to assist you. So that's the type of information we may require. Obviously, we have experienced caseworkers who will talk you through that and assist you as and when needed. But again, I just want to reiterate, we're a free service. We're there to help you resolve complaints with insurers, and if you do need our services, we're there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dion. And I guess we can't underscore enough that emphasis that it is a free service. You do not need to engage people, third parties, and you may have people who come and approach you and talk to you about, let me manage your claim for you. You do not need to do that. Often when you do that, you will actually lose some of your potential payout to that third party. You can take it to AFCA completely for free. They're very helpful and they'll work through your claim and your complaint very quickly with it. And then the decision is binding on insurers. So whatever comes out of that process is important for both you and for insurers. Right, onto the claims process, and we acknowledge upfront that people have been through quite a traumatic time. It's been very, very destabilizing and the like. Kylie is here to just hopefully break it down for you so you can understand, if you're going through the claims process, what's ahead. Thank you. Thanks, Kylie.
Thank you, Andrew, and hello, everyone. Now, we're just going to spend a bit of time talking about the claims process, as Andrew just said, because this is relevant to everyone who needs to lodge a claim. The process is regulated by ASIC, Australia's corporate regulator. The General Insurance Code of Practice outlines requirements for how insurers must respond across all elements of the insurance life cycle, including claims. The code is independently monitored and enforced by an independent code governance committee. The chart here shows each step, one after the other for simplicity, but in fact, many of these stages can occur at the same time and/or overlap. For example, some or all of the assessment could occur at the same time as the Make Safe process, and the scope of work may start to be developed during the assessment stage. But let's start at the beginning. The first step is to contact your insurer, and you can do this even if you don't know the full extent of the damage. In fact, the earlier you contact your insurer, the better that they can assist you with determining the scope of your claim. Claims can be lodged online or via your phone, whatever is easier for you. If you don't have your policy details with you, your insurer can still help. They'll just need to ask some identifying information like your contact details, your date of birth, and your insured address. So don't be concerned that you need those documents with you to make your claim. We then move on to the Make Safe part of the claims process. This is an important part of the process, as this is where the damage to your property can be attended to by a representative of the insurer to ensure emergency works are done as soon as possible to minimise any hazards and prevent further damage. This can include removing loose debris, isolating damaged solar panels or electrical circuits, and, if required, installing a roof tarp. The next part of the claims process is about assessing the damage. An insurance assessor or claims adjuster, you may hear either title, will inspect the damage to your property. A specialist report may be required to determine aspects of your claim. Particularly in a flooding event, hydrologists may be required to determine the cause of water inundation, and engineers may be required to consider any structural damage. Once the assessment of that damage is made, we move on to the claims decision-making process. This is a key claims milestone where your insurer will confirm what you are covered for. The nature of a claim will determine how long it takes to make a claim decision. For example, as I mentioned before, where specialist reports are required to support the decision process, these claims will typically take longer to determine. We then move on to the scope of work, or the statement of work, as it may be referred to. The scope of work is a written report that sets out the repair or rebuild work to be performed and the end products that are expected to be used. It's important to read this report and let your insurer know if changes are required. The initial scopes of work may be reassessed after repairs have started if further damage is uncovered, and that's okay. The revision of the scopes of work is a normal part of the process. And I'll just repeat that. The scope of work, while it is a formal written document, can change through the claims process if you, your insurer, or the builder who is looking after your repairs identify additional repair work. Now, once the scope of work has been agreed to, it's time to decide whether to repair or replace the damaged property, and this will be determined by your insurer. In this phase, if your insurer is managing the repair or rebuild work, they will appoint a builder. They will arrange the contracts and they will notify you of the construction schedule. Your insurer will also manage local council approvals as required. So they will bear the onus of the onus and responsibility for that repair work. Alternatively, there may be a cash settlement determined. So if you take a cash settlement, then the management of the repair or rebuilding work falls on yourself. It's important that if this is the case, that you comply with council regulations and building codes, as well as using a licensed builder. If you fail to do this, your home may not be insurable in the future. And finally, as we just listened to from AFCA, the feedback and complaints process is fundamentally important to the claims process. If you are unhappy with the handling of your insurance claim, you can lodge a complaint with your insurer. All insurers have dedicated dispute resolution processes to resolve your claims. And as AFCA highlighted earlier, if you don't agree with the outcome of your complaint by your insurer, you can escalate that complaint to the Australian Financial Complaints Authority. So that's the claims process end to end. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Andrew.
Right. Thanks, Kylie. So we've been through a number of these events now in the last 6 months, and we find that the questions that are coming from the community largely are very similar across the country. So given that consistency, we've tried to group up the themes from the questions that are coming from people and see if we can address some of them on this call here now. So what I might do is I'm going to ask Liam to step through some of these topics. We'll start with the cleanup process, but as you can see on the screen there, the topics like the timelines, the definition of flood versus storm cover, hydrology, cash settlements and the like. We will cover off on all those key points in the process moving forward. So Liam, can I ask you to take over from here?
Thanks, Andrew, and g'day everyone. I'll just pause for a minute and, acknowledge that many of you that are watching right now are going through a pretty tough time and have maybe, a long recovery journey ahead of you. And we're all here to help and provide you some really useful information to get you on that journey. And as Andrew said, and cleaning up is one of the first steps of that process, but actually even when to return home before cleanup can start. So just absolutely emphasise safety must be the priority. Exercise best judgment, follow emergency services directions, and certainly do not return home until emergency services have given the okay to do so. There can be a number of hazards, and are likely to be a number of hazards when you return back home. Certainly any electrical services should not be touched or used until they've been inspected by a licensed electrician. I'd also add there, be alert to asbestos as well. And if there's any doubt at all, do not touch or disturb. And best bet is to let your insurer know, or alternatively, let emergency services know. Be careful of mud as well. There's likely to be a lot of mud around, and that can be really, really slippery. So again, make sure safety is the priority, and looking after yourself. Contact your insurer as soon as is practically possible. Kylie talked to the claim process. The first step there is lodging your claim. Let your insurer know that you've experienced damage and a loss as soon as is possible. And if you've experienced any roof damage, as a particular example, again, as Kylie mentioned, your insurer can organise a make safe, and it's really important to get that done quickly as well, to protect from any damage that may occur from weather events that sort of happen down the track. don't worry if you can't find your insurance papers. Your insurer will be able to get your claim lodged just with your verbal confirmation of details, whether that's over the phone or online, if that's an option for you as well, is a good course of action to take there. Moving on now into cleanup, and this is, a really common question for people, and I'm happy for you to say, Liam said so, get in and start cleaning up. There is no reason to not get in there and start cleaning up straight away. And in fact, doing that is a really, really important step to preventing any further damage down the track from those damaged and saturated things staying in place and potentially causing more damage. Again, that safety first. Any electrical, don't even contemplate until a licensed electrician has been through. Asbestos, keep that in mind as well. But what we would ask, and what's really helpful for the insurance claim process, is that if you can take photographs or video and get snap happy, take as many as you possibly can. This supports the claim process in terms of building out schedules of loss, which is, a list of items that have been damaged. Really, really helps with the claim process. But get in there, get that cleaned out. There'll be services that are available locally, potentially, that can help you with that cleanup as well. So recovery centres, Emergency Recovery Victoria website will have information around support there as well. And of course, don't throw away items that aren't damaged and that, could conceivably be restored as well. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Liam. And we might move to the next topic now, which is around timeframes. So, Kylie, do you want to just talk about what the timeframe will look like?
Happy to, Andrew. Look, waiting for a decision to be made on a claim can be frustrating and stressful. The time required to settle or resolve a claim depends on the type of claim, as I mentioned before, the assessment and the analysis that's required to make a claim decision, and the complexity of the repair or settlement work. So patience is required, but always staying in contact with your insurer is important. The more complex the claim, typically the longer it will take to process. So please be aware of that. Certainly our insurers are required under their financial services licenses to conduct themselves in an efficient, honest and fair way to support you and to support the processing of your claim and the completion of that claim in a timely manner. Under the General Insurance Code of Practice, once a claim has been submitted, the insurer is obligated to provide an update at least every 20 business days. A routine inquiry that you might make to your insurer must be responded to within 10 business days. Insurers are seeking to make decisions as soon as possible. And if you haven't received a decision within 4 months, under the code, you will be informed of the complaints process. But also typically before that happens, your insurer will speak to you about why or if there are any delays that are being in place. Typically that's because further assessment or specialty assessment is required. Now, at the moment, we do have a shortage of hydrologists in Australia, and as Liam mentioned before, hydrologists may be required due to the nature of this event and hydrology reports to be developed. So there are some blockages in the process at the moment, which could see that 4-month mark be extended for the decision around your claim. Other factors that are impacting the claims timeline at the moment include the shortage of builders and tradies in Australia. And now this is a carry-on post the closed national borders during COVID-19, and the fact that we also have a very active construction market for housing at the moment, and we have very little immigration occurring. There's also a limited supply of building materials such as timber and steel at the moment, and this is also adding time into the complaints resolution process. If your claim is for a motor vehicle, there is and has been since COVID-19 first commenced a shortage of new motor vehicles. However, your insurer will work with you to identify a replacement vehicle as quickly as possible. And of course, we have seen persistent bad weather impacting the east coast of Australia. And this also does impede repair work, particularly where continuing wet weather is preventing repair and rebuild work from occurring, or for a drying out to occur to certain parts of your premises or property. Insurers are also working closely with governments and the building industry to get access to more tradies so rebuilds can happen as soon as possible. And as you heard Andrew mention before, because we have declared this event an insurance catastrophe, your claim is being prioritised by your insurer and will be dealt with in the most logical way, depending on that triage and that prioritisation process. But if you have any questions, please contact your insurer and ask them. They are best placed to support the claims process for you. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Kylie. One area we get a lot of questions around is the difference between storm and flood cover. Liam, how do we explain that for people?
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so storm cover and flood cover are, very important issues to discuss for an event like this one and for flooding events generally. There is a standard definition for flood cover, which is in the Insurance Contracts Act, and I will cover that off verbatim now. So that definition is the covering of normally dry land by water that has escaped or been released from the normal confines of any lake or any river, creek or other natural watercourse, whether or not altered or modified, or any reservoir, canal or dam. Now that's a bit of a mouthful. To try and simplify that, think of flood as overflowing from something that normally holds water, and think of stormwater and stormwater runoff as being water that flows with the natural contours and hills, of the surrounding area. That is simplified. There's some technical assessment that needs to happen, determine which has occurred in some cases, but that's essentially the distinction: filling up and overflowing, as opposed to flowing along the normal course. Andrew?
And Liam, that's why, Kylie referenced it just before around hydrology reports. Do we want to just go to the next slide and we can just quickly explain why a hydrology report is needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So hydrologist is a scientist that studies the distribution and movement of water, and also actually the impact of human activity on water availability and conditions as well. These are the specialists that determine and have the skills and tools to determine exactly that, where the water has come from and which it might be, whether it's flooding from something that normally holds water like a dam or a river versus that stormwater runoff that is the rain falling onto the land and flowing along the normal contours. They'll determine or make their determinations and assessments based on a whole range of data. They'll take river gauge data, rainfall data, witness accounts, photographs and these types of things into account to determine heights and depths and timings and these sorts of things. They'll also use complex models to plot out the timeline of how events occurred to get ultimately to that determination of where the water came from and when. Now, really importantly, the cost of the hydrologist, actually a step back, the hydrologist will be appointed by your insurer if it's necessary, and accordingly that cost would be covered by your insurer. You could seek to appoint a hydrologist yourself for an opinion, but that is absolutely not necessary in the process. And if you disagree with the outcome of a hydrology report, we've spoken a couple of times now around the complaint process, so that internal process with your insurer, and then that independent process through AFCA as well. Dion, was there anything that you wanted to throw in there quickly?
Nothing other than just to add that disputes around hydrology are something that they can look at and commonly do with respect to flood complaints, where an insurer may decline or partially decline a claim on the basis of a flood exclusion and provide hydrology. If you disagree with that report, or you believe based on your own information that there are errors in it or anything wrong with it, that is something that AFCA can look at and consider as part of our process.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dion. Andrew?
Thank you. So another issue that comes up from time to time is cash settlements. Kylie, do you just want to step through what are the main principles around cash settlements?
Thanks, Andrew. A cash settlement is where your insurer has accepted your claim and pays you a sum of money equal to the cost they would pay for your policy entitlements. So instead of authorising building repairs or ordering replacement contents and arranging your temporary accommodation, they will give you a cash payment. Now, if your claim is cash settled, as I mentioned before, all responsibility for ensuring repairs to your property are completed to the proper standards, replacing contents and arranging alternative accommodation rests with you. For that reason, we advise you think very carefully about all the possible outcomes before taking a cash settlement. Now, your product disclosure statement outlines your entitlements and any limits that might apply with regards to a cash settlement, and we advise that you go and read that document carefully if this is an option that is tabled. If your claim is cash settled, your insurer will provide you with a cash settlement fact sheet so that outlines a range of information relevant to your settlement, how it was calculated, and the options available to you. And as we've talked a number of times today about the complaints process, if you're not satisfied with the amount your insurer is recommending as a cash settlement, you should raise this as a complaint with your insurer in the first instance. And of course, AFCA is available to escalate that complaint to if required. Now, insurers actually generally don't prefer to provide a cash settlement because if they're doing the building repairs, they can ensure that the same level of assurance that repairs will be completed to a high standard and that the repairs are completed to a high standard, that the required standards and tolerances of their panels are completed by their trusted builders, and for some work that there are guarantees in place for the work that the insurer undertakes via those builders. However, when you do it yourself, those guarantees from your insurer do not exist. For contents, this is slightly different. Typically, cash settlements are given for contents because it's the fastest way to allow you to go out and choose the products that you wish to replace your contents with. So that is a slight difference to your building repairs or rebuilds. Quite often a cash settlement is the fastest way to deal with those. Now, there are a couple of reasons why cash settlements would be provided. The first could be that it's actually unsafe to repair or rebuild your home, or your local council will not allow you to repair or rebuild your home. Your insurer also may only partially accept your claim, and this could be because there is existing damage to your property that is not covered by your insurer. And in that instance, a cash settlement will be a viable option. If your claim is a total loss and the cost to repair your property is actually expected to be more than your house was insured for, then a cash settlement may also be provided. And finally, a cash settlement might be provided because you have requested it and the insurer agrees to that request. So there's some of the common reasons why a cash settlement might be made. It's also important that if you have a mortgage, you check your insurance contracts and PDS, because in many instances where a mortgage is involved, the cash settlement has to be paid through to your bank in the first instance, and then the bank will liaise with you about how that cash settlement is utilised. Andrew, back to you.
And Damien, I presume cash settlements is often an area that people will seek legal advice on as well, and it's important to know that that is, again, available free through your service.
Yes, that's right, Andrew. I think the important point of distinction for ARC Justice and the community legal centres we run is that we're completely independent. We're expert lawyers in a range of areas, and we can give that advice in insurance matters, but also in other legal issues as well. You might end up in the insurer's internal dispute resolution process. You might end up at AFCA, but it can be helpful to speak with an independent lawyer beforehand. But yes, cash settlements are an issue that we often see. Denial of claims, of course, maintenance exclusions or fair wear and tear exclusions, delays in complaint handling is something that we often people seek assistance for. And quite often we have these storm chasers, these for-profit providers that are looking to provide assistance for profit with pursuing an insurance claim. So yeah, I guess we just encourage people to speak with us about those issues, but also just because there's legal issues rarely arise in isolation anyway, but there's likely to be multiple legal issues arising from the floods. Insurance will just be part of that. We can help identify those problems and either we'll assist or we'll warmly refer to the specialists, free legal services that can help.
Great, thanks for that. So once we're onto the rebuild, Liam, what can people expect?
Thanks, Andrew. Look, a couple of things to quickly cover off here. Kylie's given a really good overview of the claim process and cash settlement. So if your insurer is authorising a builder to do a repair, in all cases you will be consulted regarding the scope of work. And as Kylie called out, that is something that can change over the lifetime of a claim as new damage, for example, is identified. And you'll also be consulted around any redesign or selections that might be required, paint and fixtures and fittings and these types of things. A couple of things to call out in terms of timeframes for the building repair. Again, as Kylie mentioned out, there's a range of timeframes that are called out in the General Insurance Code of Practice. But in terms of the rebuilding itself, the weather can play a factor, which is relevant in this La Nina cycle that we're in. There's a higher likelihood of weather, and council approvals and the like can also impact the duration of a building repair. Where your insurers authorise that repair, you're ensuring the builder will take care of all of that, but that's sort of a process that sits outside and is a factor in the overall duration of repair. Any concerns that you have throughout the process where a builder has been appointed, you can access that complaints process that we've called out already. Thanks, Andrew.
And Liam, if there's with the rain continuing just in the last couple of minutes, if there's subsequent damage or mould, what should people be doing?
Yeah, so as you call out, unfortunately, with this La Nina system, there is a higher than usual likelihood that there'll be rain and more rain and more rain. And with that, the potential for more damage. The first thing is if you believe you've experienced more damage or rather have experienced another event, get in contact with your insurer straight away. Typically, if it's damage on damage, as I say, so an area that has already been impacted is impacted again, that's unlikely to require a second claim. It will just be covered off under the existing claim. If there's new damage, then that will be assessed on a case-by-case basis with your insurer, but could well result in a second claim needing to be lodged and managed. But your insurer will sort of coordinate those together as sort of being a separate independent process. Moving on to mould then, which is a flow on, as Andrew sort of called out with the ongoing wet. Called out earlier, get in there and clean out your home. That's completely fine to do that. One of the reasons is to try and prevent things like mould. So getting that clean out done quickly, getting the strip out done quickly enables the property to dry. In these conditions, though, that is very challenging and will take some time. And if mould does develop, really important, the first step is let your insurer know if they haven't already identified it themselves. And they'll go through a process of additional drying as required, remediation, like getting hygienists involved to do really deep cleaning, antimicrobial treatments as they're called. They'll do testing to make sure that any levels that were identified are brought back down to what's called an environmental baseline level. There's mould spores in the environment at all times, so it's not about getting it down to zero, it's about getting it down to that baseline environmental level. And once everything's signed off as dry and those levels are right, then everything is good to go at that point to commence repair. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Liam. So I think we might start to draw to a close here. I just want to thank everyone who's participated on the call today. Hopefully we've covered off the key questions that we know are coming through from the various communities that are impacted. We acknowledge, obviously, that it is a very stressful time for everybody, and we're hopeful that we're able to resolve perhaps some of your questions in your minds about what your options are. As I indicated at the outset, we're likely to hold some community town halls in some of the regional areas where you should be able to come and meet face-to-face with your insurer if required. So stay tuned to your local councils, your local MPs and the like. We'll be talking to them about that and broadcasting that information. So really, from now, the key couple of messages I want to leave everyone with. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact your insurer, either on the phone or online. If you're unhappy with what is happening and you need advice, there are legal services available to you, and quite often they are free and very helpful and experienced in this regard. If you are unhappy, raise an internal dispute with your insurer, and if that claim is not progressing satisfactorily, you always have the option of taking it to AFCA for an independent external assessment of that complaint. And really, lastly, we wish everyone all the very best. We are working very hard. Insurers have literally brought on thousands of people to try to move through this event, and hopefully we can get through and make sure that people are in the best possible position by the end of this year, early next year, and at least with a plan about how we're going to rebuild and get communities back on track. So thank you for joining us online, and thank you to everyone today for participating in the panel discussion.